I'm John Duval. Welcome to the Scriptural Way Bible Study. The Scriptural Way Bible Study is brought to you by the Seminole Pointe Church of Christ, located at 16300 North May Avenue, Oklahoma City. On behalf of the elders and members of the Seminole Pointe Church of Christ, I would like to thank you for your interest in spiritual matters. Now, let's take our Bibles and seek the Scriptural Way. Good evening. I'm John Duvall.
And I'm Dale Decker.
And this is the Scriptural Way broadcast. Well, Dale, welcome back.
Yeah, it seemed like it's been forever since we've been in here.
It has been.
A little longer for me than for you, though.
That's true. If you'll recall, our last broadcast was the Tuesday before our gospel meeting. Our gospel meeting began June 10th with Brother Maurice Barnett. And because of what time we're done on that Tuesday, we don't air a Scriptural Way broadcast.
That is correct. And I was missing the Tuesday before that.
That's right. You're missing that Tuesday. So we've had the 12th, and then I've been out of town and was back in town last week, but not enough really to pull the show together. Let's take a week off. And John, he should be back some point this week, I think, so he'll be joining us next Tuesday. So hopefully and thankfully you didn't forget about us, and we're so thankful that you've taken time out of your busy schedule to join us for this time period of studying the Word of God. Dale, you doing all right today?
I'm doing wonderful. Very good.
Very good. I'm doing very well myself. We had a really good vacation. I got to see a lot of places, got to see my father. We always enjoy taking him with us and everything.
Absolutely. And you don't get to see him very often.
That's right. And also when we were gone, we visited several different congregations, one of which was the College View Church of Christ in Columbia, Tennessee. And that's where Greg Gwynn preaches. Jacob Gwynn, his son, attends. And they are the hosts of the virtual Bible study that comes on Thursday nights at 8 o'clock Central Standard Time at thevirtualbiblestudy.com. And they do a very good job. But I tell you what I discovered about them. Those guys are tall. Probably about the size of John Knipp. And Greg is tall, and Jacob is tall. And then he's got a brother they call the big one. He's taller than either one of those two. So
you have to look up to them.
Yeah, it makes me feel short. But we had a very good visit with them, enjoyed meeting them in the congregation, and they were gracious enough to ask me to preach for them. And nobody fell asleep, I don't think. They very courteous.
Oh, good.
Well, I'll tell you where we're at tonight. We're going to be looking at a very important question. It has been somewhat of a divisive question among brethren. Some people will throw the whole subject into Romans chapter 14. Yeah, Romans chapter 14. Some will throw part of it into it. I have known families to kind of divide over it. And really, it is a very important subject because our youth are faced with it. And even as adults, depending on where you work, the parties that you go to, you're faced with it as well. And the question we're looking at tonight is, what does the Bible say about Christians and alcohol? Christians and alcohol. And I guess the fundamental question is, when you look at this, is truly what does the Bible say? Not what does the world think about it. Because the world thinks as the world thinks. Kind of redundantly stated in the outline I was told a bit earlier. But we cannot expect the people of the world to understand our position, biblically speaking, against alcohol. And so what we'll do with this lesson, we're going to take a couple different looks at this particular subject, including the idea of social drinking. But we want to hear from you. So if you haven't downloaded a copy of the lesson, please take a moment to do so. If I failed to check to see, Travis, do you see a link for the lesson beneath the video window? Because I think I got the main page up there for you. If I didn't put a link to it, I apologize for that, and I'll update that later. I don't recall whether or not I did, and I'm almost certain I didn't. So we might be able to take care of that over the break. But anyway, we'll make that outline available to you. But we do want to hear your comments and questions. It may be that you disagree with something that we say. Let us know. It may be that we missed something and you want to add to it. Please feel free to do so. You'll see the chat window located to the right of the video window. If this is your first time joining us, you can click guest and type in your name, and there you are in the chat room. And we would definitely love to hear from you. Dale, let's go ahead though, and let's begin by looking at the Bible's description regarding the effects of alcohol.
Okay. Now let me just say.
Go ahead. I should have said, Dale, you got any comments?
That's all right.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think it's important that we discuss this subject because we do have, as John mentioned, brethren in both the conservative churches and the liberal churches that have this mindset of social drinking, and they take this from what Paul told Timothy in 1 Timothy chapter 5.
That's true.
When he said, drink no longer water, but use a little wine for thy stomach's sake, and thine often infirmities. Obviously, Timothy had some health problems, and so...
And I did leave that verse out of this lesson.
Well, you should not have.
Well, I'll explain my reason here in a minute, but keep going though.
Okay. The point is that many of the versions, King James Version and other versions, use the word wine there. And so this is a debate that it's okay to drink socially. And the world kind of encourages that because young people, when they get out of college and they start working for various employments, the employer, the boss, will encourage that young person to drink socially when they go to get-togethers, award meetings and such as this. But it's a perfect opportunity for Christians to be able to stand up and take a stand against drinking and be able to teach the world why we do not drink. The All-Star baseball game is taking place tonight, and I'm thankful that all of you folks have tuned in with us because I'm looking forward to your comments. But
Absolutely.
One of the things that is coming out of this All-Star baseball game is there's a 19-year-old baseball pitcher. First time a 19-year-old's ever been in an All-Star game. But he's a Mormon, and he has never touched a drink in his life.
Really?
Never drank beer or any other alcoholic beverage in his life. That's one of the things that they've been promoting about this young man. As Christians, we should have that said about us. We have never touched alcohol. There should never be that debate as to whether it's acceptable to socially drink or not. Because when you get right down to it, if you're drunk after 6 beers, which beer was it that got you drunk? And even our law enforcement agencies, it doesn't take very much alcohol to get a ticket today because very little alcohol in the system will indeed dull your thought process. It will cause you to have accidents that you normally would not have because of the fact that your reaction time is much slower.
And some of this we'll talk about.
Yes.
As we go through the study there.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that example of the baseball players is a wonderful example to show that individuals can live by that moral.
Absolutely. If Mormons can do it, Christians can certainly do it.
That's right. That's right. And the approach that we've taken in this lesson is more along the aspect of what some would use to justify social drinking.
Exactly right.
In the case in point of Timothy, even if it was an alcoholic beverage, it was diluted by Jewish standards. Okay, it would not have been what we drink today. And even if we see it there, it was for medicinal purposes, clearly and distinctly different from the purpose that people are advocating today. And so that's one of the reasons why I didn't put it in the lesson, because we're focusing it. But you make a very good point, though. People will use it. Well, if Timothy could take a little wine for my stomach's sake, I can drink a glass of wine at every meal to calm my nerves. And that's the argumentation role that is used for that.
Well, in our medical society, they encourage this. They will tell you that a glass of wine will actually improve your heart, will decrease heart disease. And I've heard cardiologists make comments, so you should jog on the way to the liquor store.
Yep.
So, we do need to look at the subject, and that's
right.
why it's a good thing to go and see what the Bible says about describing the effects of alcohol.
And what is interesting, some of the effects that we're about to look at were not written simply 200 years ago or 100 years ago. If you go back to the writing of Psalms and the writings of Proverbs, you go back to the reign of David and the reign of Solomon.
Absolutely.
You go back probably, and I'd have to go back and double check my dates and everything, probably somewhere around 800, 600, or 700 BC period. They were full aware of it. Go all the way back to Noah if you wanted to, but let's start with a few passages from the writings of David and Solomon.
Okay. First off, we look at Psalms 107, verse 27, and the psalmist says, "They reel to and fro and stagger like a drunken man and are at their wits' end." And I really like that description because, first off, they recognize that a drunken man is not in full control of their faculties.
That's right.
The proverb writer said in Proverbs 20, verse 1, says, "Wine is a mocker, strong drink is a brawler, and whoever is led astray by it is not wise."
Now, it is interesting that he uses the term that wine is a mocker and strong drink is a brawler, in that it leads an individual, and we'll talk a little bit later why alcohol does this, but it leads an individual to that type of mental mindset where the inhibitions are removed and he's a tendency to fly off at the handle.
Exactly right. They get louder, they get boisterous, they become a brawler. Fights are stirred up. Many fights, many people who end up in the hospital as a result of drinking, and fights as a result of it. And we have other crimes such as women being assaulted and everything because of alcohol.
Well, Dale, we have that local case in Pointe of that police officer.
Exactly right.
In Edmond, he had gone to a bar with his father, if I remember correctly, and these guys were drunk, inebriated, and they began a bar fight, and he tried to stop them. And he was severely injured.
He's paralyzed to this day.
Yeah. And so the people of the world recognize it. Christians should recognize it as well. Let's look at Proverbs chapter 23, 19 through 21. And let's take this a little bit farther, Dale.
Okay. Here we see the writing says, "Hear, my son, and be wise, and guide your heart in the way. Do not mix with wine bibbers, or with gluttonous eaters of meat. For the drunkard and the glutton will come to poverty, and drowsiness will clothe a man with rags." Now think about that, because the true drunkard, the true alcoholic, is so bound on destroying himself. My father was killed in a fire, and my mother's second husband was an alcoholic. Mm-hmm. So much so that he would literally drink aftershave lotion just to get the alcohol.
Oh, wow.
He died of a brain hemorrhage.
That's what it does.
Yeah, exactly right.
And some people say, you're looking at the worst case scenario. In many cases that aren't the worst. But the thing is, the worst is always possible.
Exactly right. You never know.
We've said it before here, that an alcoholic would have never been an alcoholic had they never taken the first drink. It's that simple.
That's correct.
If you never start down the road, sometimes they'll say, well, people are predispositioned. I read an article one time that suggested medically that there's something lacking within our system that alcohol provides. The thing is, you don't know you're lacking it until you take the first drink, and if that's true, and it's fulfilled. Well, if you'd never taken the first drink, you never would have had the problem of becoming an alcoholic. Think about all the people killed in drunk driving accidents. Think about all the people who've done things they've later regretted. It never would have happened had they not taken that drink.
That is true.
Yeah. Look at verse 29 there in Proverbs chapter 23. He says, "Who has woe, who has sorrow, who has contentions, who has complaints, who has wounds without cause, who has redness of eyes?" Not the person that stays up late at night, but the one that drinks the alcohol. And we know that. Why do you think commercials on television oftentimes will say, "Drink responsibly"? There's a reason for that, because they know the fundamental effects of alcohol. I tell you what we're going to do. We'll go ahead and take our first break, and here's what I'd like for you to do, is during the break, if you'll refresh this browser window, you'll see the link pop in for the download. I have that. I'm sorry it wasn't there earlier, but it's there now. Should be there now. So if you want to refresh the page, you may have to sign back in the chat window. Or if you want to open up another browser to the same window, then it'll come up as well. You don't have to leave this one. Just open up a new window, type in live.scripturalway.org, let it load in, and you should see the fresh link there. So do that, and you go ahead and get a copy of the outline and can follow along and see where we're going with this. And we come back, we'll also take some of the comments that are in the chat room, very good comments as well. So stay tuned, we will be right back.
Hello, I'm Ron Witt, one of the elders of the Seminole Pointe Church of Christ. On behalf of the elders and members of the Seminole Pointe Church of Christ, I would like to invite you to be our guest at any of our worship services and Bible classes. The meeting place of the Seminole Pointe Church of Christ is located at 16300 North May Avenue, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, zip code 73013. The Seminole Pointe Church of Christ meets Sunday mornings at 9:30 for Bible classes, 10:30 for worship service, and 5 p.m. for our afternoon worship service. We also have Bible classes on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Whether you live in Oklahoma City area or you are traveling through Oklahoma City, we would love to have you come and be our guest. We have Bible classes for all ages. At the Seminole Pointe Church of Christ, our focus is to teach only the Word of God. Rest assured that when you visit with us, you will find that we will appeal only to God's precious Word. Now, let us return to our study.
Let's take a moment and consider a couple of verses from the chat, or comments from the chat room. I say verses because there are some verses in there.
Very good.
Randall Duval from St. Roberts, Missouri, reminded us of 1 Peter 4, 3 through 4, and we'll talk about this a little bit later. And this is an excellent point. He says, "For we have spent enough of our past lifetime in doing the will of the Gentiles." Then he defines some examples of what he's talking about. "When we walked in lewdness, lust, drunkenness, revelries, drinking parties, and abominable idolatries." Now a little bit later on we'll talk about the drinking parties there. But he said we used to do that. We used to walk in the way of the world, is the way that we would refer to it. But now we do it differently. He also makes the point in bringing up from the Proverbs as well, one that we looked at, Proverbs 20 verse 1, just remind us of it again, that wine is a mocker, the strong drink is a brawler, and the person who's led by it is not wise. And then Randy says the same chemicals that make wine good for you are found in grape juice. The alcohol is not property, going back to what you were talking about a while ago there. Brian brings to our mind 1 Timothy 3:3 and 1 Corinthians 8 in talking about elders should not be given to wine. He says, "I think that standard should not be any different just because I am not an elder. I think being an elder should be a goal of ours." And that's an excellent point. All the qualifications, with the exception of just a couple, or maybe three, all the qualifications of one who would desire to serve as an elder are qualifications that Christians must meet anyway.
That's correct.
And so not given to wine, not given to much wine, however you want to read that should be of us as Christians anyway. He's not saying, well, elders have to live by a higher standard than the average Christian. That's wrong. That's not according to Scripture there. An elder is a faithful child of God who has the responsibility of helping other Christians, shepherding the congregation among them. Chance Rufino, also from St. Roberts, Missouri. He's in the training program up there with Randall. He brings Habakkuk 2 verse 5. See, I knew I was going to pay for not having the outline up there. They're pulling all my good verses that are in the outline.
Okay. That's okay.
And I can't blame them for looking ahead.
Because that's the next verse we were going to look at anyway.
That's right. That's exactly right. And so we'll hold off on reading Chance's here, his quote, because we're going to look at it here in a minute. But in Luke chapter 1 verse 15, he does remind us, though, that "for he shall be great in the sight of the Lord, and shall drink neither wine nor strong drink," talking about John the Baptizer. Okay, he was not to be drinking strong drink. And so Randall goes on to say that one cannot drink socially and make peace or edify Christians as taught in, and he lists several verses there. And that's an excellent point there. Mm-hmm. The qualities that typically is brought about by inebriation goes contrary to what we must do as Christians. in dealing with one another and working with one another. He makes a point we cannot drink and be the proper example with verses listed. I think he's got his sermon outlined. He's just copying and pasting.
Probably so.
No, it's a good point there. He says, one cannot drink in the name of the Lord Jesus. Whatever you do in word or deed, do all by the name of the Lord Jesus. Colossians 3:17. You can't do that. One cannot drink to the glory of God. See 1 Corinthians 10:31. But Shane Marshall Nash, welcome to the study, Shane. It's good to have you with us. Bringing forth Proverbs 23:31 through 32. And I think this is a very good passage. And it's not one that we had in the outline, at least not yet. He says, do not look at the wine when it is red, when it sparkles in the cup and goes down smoothly. In the end, it bites like a serpent and stings like an adder. Now, this reminds me of some of the alcoholic commercials. You know, they'll show them pouring this red wine or some sort of spark bubbly stuff into a cup, and they've got the light on it. This is all about sales. And they have the light angle just right so that it sparkles and it glimmers and it shimmers. And some of the alcoholic commercials make you think that if you buy their beer and drink it, you'll be on some deserted island with some beautiful woman sitting in 2 lounge chairs looking out at the ocean. And it's all about visual. And even back then, you know, in kind of more of a figurative way of speaking, he warns against the look of that.
Well, and along with that, some people may know this, but white wine, you cool that. Red wine you do not cool.
Really?
Red wine is served at room temperature. White wine you serve it in a small glass.
Okay.
Red wine you serve it in a big glass. Red wine you will actually take the glass and stir it like this.
Okay.
And what the proverb writer was talking about there is if you take the red wine and you tip the glass on its side and everything, you'll actually see not droplets like water coming down the side of the glass on the inside, but it will actually almost look like an oily, a smooth, and that's how you determine if the red wine is really good quality red wine. And then you continue to shake it like this so you get oxygen there and you get supposedly the flavor. Okay.
By the way,
the red wine.
We don't have a course on this at the church here.
No,
He's
we
learned
have-
this elsewhere.
Yeah, I've learned this elsewhere. Read about it too. The red wine is the wine that has the health benefits. The white wine does not have the health benefits. It's in the peel of the red grape that you have that and I forget the name of it, but that's the quality that is good for the heart.
Yes.
And as Randall mentioned, you get that same quality out of Welch's grape juice.
Yeah.
Or red grape juice.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Very good point. Chance brings up a passage we'll read here in just a moment from Isaiah 5:11. Daniel says there are also several charges in Scripture to be sober-minded. Very good point. How can one be sober-minded while intoxicated? You know, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later about the effects of alcohol on the brain, and it works against us being sober-minded, so to speak, able to focus and keep attention to our service unto God. And Randall says, Shane is in our preacher training program as well. Oh, very good. He's the new guy. Shane, welcome to the program there. Randall drives a hard boot camp, but you'll be able to survive it. He does a good job up there. All right, well, let's look at some more verses here with this, beginning with Habakkuk 2, verse 15.
All right. Habakkuk says, woe to him who gives drink to his neighbor, pressing him to your bottle, even to make him drunk, that you may look on his nakedness.
You know, it's an interesting point because, again, it's talking about the effect of the alcohol, of the drink upon an individual. And in this case, you're using it to take advantage, or the Israelites were using it to take advantage of their neighbors, of one another, essentially. Isaiah 28, verses 7 and 8, consider this. But they also have erred through wine, and through intoxicating drink are out of the way. The priest and the prophet have erred through intoxicating drink. They are swallowed up by wine. They are out of the way through intoxicating drink. They err in vision. They stumble in judgment. For all tables are full of vomit and filth. No place is clean. Again, Some would say, John, you're talking about the worst case scenarios. The thing is, though, this isn't something that you drink, and roll the dice, it might be you. If you drink enough, you will get to this point. You don't drink 10 drinks and now you're drunk. Every sup of alcohol you take begins the effect of getting into your bloodstream and going up to the brain. I mean, it begins with even this first drink. And these are the effects of it. Jeremiah 25, verse 27, Jeremiah writes, "Therefore you shall say to them, Thus says the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, Drink, be drunk, and vomit. Fall and rise no more, because of the sword which I will send among you." Again, he's not advocating drinking. He's basically kind of giving up. So you just go ahead. You drink, be drunk, vomit. I'm going to send the sword among you. But the point is, look at what is it that they're drinking. It's not regular old grape juice. It's the strong drink. It's the alcoholic wine, the alcohol they were consuming there. And then the last thing that we'll look at in this section comes from Isaiah 5:11 through 12. Chance put into the chat room Isaiah 5:11. But Dale, let's go ahead and read here the effects of alcohol upon some of Israel.
It says, "Woe to those who rise early in the morning, that they may follow intoxicating drink, who continue until night, till wine inflames them. The harp and the strings, the tambourine and flute, and wine are in their feast, but they do not regard the work of the Lord, nor consider the operation of his hands."
In that case in point, they were being led astray, much like Randy talking about the effects of alcohol on our relationship as Christians. It was leading them and a part of idol worship and into things that were of the world and not of God.
Something to keep in mind too is like in Isaiah the 28th chapter, verse 8 says, "For all tables are full of vomit and filth, no place is clean." Jeremiah 25 verse 27 says, "Drink and be drunk and vomit." If you think about alcohol and you think about tobacco, other products such as this, marijuana, all of these things, the body was never designed to consume these things. If
Right.
it was designed to consume these things, they wouldn't make us sick. Food doesn't make us sick unless we overeat. Water doesn't make us sick unless we drink too much and get it in our lungs.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
But God has created a perfect creation here, in the sense that we were created in His image, and He created the body in such a way that it was able to tolerate certain things. But those things that God never intended for us to consume makes us sick.
Yeah.
And if you've never been in an area where, I served in the military for 11 years. We would have these get-togethers and dress blues, and you can't imagine the amount of wine and champagne that was flowing through there, and the amount of officers, because I was an officer, and this was officer functions, the number of officers that walked out of those clubs intoxicated to the point that they'd walk out in the parking lot and vomit.
Yeah.
It's not a pleasant sight, and it certainly doesn't smell good either. Imagine that in a bar, and most drinking is done in the dark.
That's true. That's true. I mean, some people say outdoor sporting events and so forth, but a lot of the social drinking you're talking about is done in those type of settings.
Exactly right.
Resveratrol is what you're looking for. That's what Daniel put in the chat room, and I looked it up, make sure he didn't misspell it. I thought it was something else, but resveratrol or something like that.
Yeah, I thought it was something else too, but Daniel may be right. It's
Yeah.
been a while since I've seen it.
Brian says, though, Timothy did not have the medicines we have today. We do not need to drink alcohol for any medicinal use. And he does say the word wine is also used 3 ways in the Bible. One way is used to describe grape juice. The second way was very watered down. And third is still nothing compared to wine today, even with liberal standards. And that's true. There's an interesting book, a very old book as far as written sometime in the late 1800s, called Bible Wines. And you still buy it daily, it'll be paperback. Some people dispute this fellow's studies and everything. But his point is that wine tastes best when it's sweet. Well, wine is sweet when it's grape juice. And so they learn different methods of keeping it from fermenting or boiling it down to like what we'd call a jelly substance.
They would boil it down
Yeah.
to basically a syrup, and that's one of the words that's used for wine in the Bible. One thing to keep in mind is, first off, Timothy knew that drinking was wrong. And I'm saying this simply because if he didn't know that, Paul would never have had to encourage him to take a little wine for thy stomach's sake.
Okay.
Because Timothy would have automatically done that.
Well, unless Timothy just hadn't thought about it, which is a
Yeah.
possibility.
I think in that day and time that because wine was prevalent, they didn't have refrigerators, they didn't have water, potable water like we have today, and so
Maybe Luke told him to, and Paul just had to reaffirm it.
it could be.
Guessing.
The grape juice was a common juice, and I have always gone with the idea that this Greek word here for wine with Timothy was the type of syrup that you would take by the teaspoons like you would medicine.
Very well could be. It could be. Let's see. Randy makes. I think I may have missed one here real quick. Now, Randy says, going back to what Dale said earlier, if 5 beers make me 100% drunk, then 1 beer makes me 20% drunk. My question to people is, what percentage drunk will you bet your soul on? You know, and we'll talk about this a little bit later in the lesson. You'll see this in the outline. But the way alcohol affects us is quite simple. The body does not digest the alcohol. The alcohol is absorbed through your stomach lining directly into your bloodstream. Now, the other parts of the wine, the grapes and so forth, that'll digest through your system. The alcohol is absorbed through your stomach lining into your bloodstream. And once it gets into the bloodstream, it makes a beeline for the brain. So, you know, if you drink 1 beer, the alcohol in that 1 beer is going to be absorbed into your bloodstream, essentially, and it is considered a poison, and it will begin the journey of affecting your brain. It's not like you can drink 3 of them, 4 of them, and then finally it hits the brain on the 5th one and now makes you drunk. It's all the process of building up to it. Years ago, there was an old show called Happy Days. And one of the episodes, you know, the guys were going to go to some binge drinking thing. And they were trying, someone said, well, you got to drink olive oil to coat your stomach. You got to drink milk to coat your stomach. The point is to try to slow down the process of the absorption so they could drink more. Now, whether or not that worked, I don't know because I've never done that. But the point is, though, what we're talking about is why 1 beer begins the process of making you inebriated. 2 beers continues the process. 3 beers, you're getting closer and closer to 100%. And if you drink enough, and what happens is, you think about drinking, I don't know what the legal blood alcohol level or what you could go over and be arrested there, but what they mean by that is how much of your blood is alcohol, essentially. You know, and so that's what the body does with it, and that's why it affects us. Any thoughts, Dale?
Well, and I had a thought there, and it kind of escaped me. But as far as the blood alcohol level, it depends on the state. As far as
The
what
legal, yeah.
Generally, 2 glasses of wine would be consumed or considered too much to drive in most states. Depending on the beer, because they make 3.2 beer, and that's what's sold in a lot of grocery stores. Okay. If it's in a liquor store, it's generally 6% alcohol in beer. 1 beer can be too much for a lot of people. Alcohol, as you mentioned, is very readily absorbed in the body, and this is why even in our medical industry, you look at most of the cough syrups that we have. Now, for children, it'll say alcohol-free on there, but most of the cough syrups that we have for adults have alcohol in it. And why? So it will be quickly absorbed so that it does the medicinal job that it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
And when you think about the fact that medicine recognizes the benefits of alcohol, you can also see how alcohol in beverages can have a negative impact as well.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Guest number 614 says in 1 Thessalonians 5:11, we are directed to encourage one another. I'm assuming this is throughout the Christian world. Where would this fit in then to Christians in countries where wine is commonplace? Is that social drinking or a cultural exception? All right, I'll come back to the two other comments here in just a moment there. I think Guest 614 has a very good point. And that is, when we talk about this, there will be Christians in other countries who, as a common practice, wine is consumed at the dinner table. Now, there may be different types, there may be different levels and everything, but in the end, what we're trying to do is to show that as Christians from the Bible, especially in the day and age in which we live, there's no reason to consume alcohol, whether it be for social drinking or it be in the privacy of an individual's own home, because of the danger and the threat that it poses to the individual.
Well, and that practice that 614 is talking about really started back in the early years when water was not very potable in the European countries.
Right.
And France. They raised a lot of grapes there and a lot of wine. In our country, we think French wines are great wines until recently, and now our country thinks that we can make wines as good, if not better, than the French. But
I've heard a lot of people whine in our country.
That's exactly right. But the point is that, yes, 614 is correct. In a lot of the European countries and in France, that is something that's put on the table. When I was in high school, I had a high school teacher that he was German, and he would tell stories when he was a little boy how they would have beer sitting around the table and everything, and after dinner and everything, he would go around drinking what was left in the mugs and everything of the beer. I think though today the water, and I don't know if 614 spent time over there, and many of our listeners have probably spent time in foreign countries, but I spent 18 months in Korea. I was advised where to drink water and where not to drink water. As an officer, I had to go into the bars to supervise the troops to make sure they didn't get too drunk, so I learned to drink pineapple juice from a can. And I was fine with that. Water is potable though, and so as a Christian we can go into those countries and we don't have to drink the wine and everything, and it gives us an opportunity to explain to individuals. I went to one award program with Pfizer once, who I worked for, and had a husband and wife sitting at the same table with us that they were Mormons, but he was a converted Mormon after they got married, I think, and he came back all excited. He says, "Look, honey, I've got a non-alcoholic beer here. It's called O'Doul's, if you don't know what it is." And I kind of got him in trouble because I said to him, I says, "Have you looked at the label on that beer?" "No, why?" And I said, "Well, that beer, although it says non-alcoholic, it has alcohol in it." "Really?" I said, "Yeah, look at it. It's 0.05%. And he looked at it, and his wife looked at it, and he was in trouble from that point on, and he pushed the beer forward. The point is that we can always have opportunities to teach.
Well, and for some reason, he found it important to drink a beer.
Well, he liked the taste of it before he got married, I'm assuming.
Going back to,
yeah.
Okay.
And now he's found a non-alcoholic, and so that conforms to his Mormon religion until he found out it had alcohol in it.
Well, one thing that a thought occurred to me about 614, though, is there in most of the countries where wine is consumed on a regular, at home, with dinner basis, even there they do recognize moderation. There's a difference between, now I'm not saying right or wrong here, I'm just saying in practice now. There are houses where they may drink a glass of wine with their meal, but they will not go out and get plastered. They exercise moderation. It would be, to them, it's like us sitting down with Diet Coke or sweet tea and then going out to a bar and getting wasted. You can be arrested for drunken inebriation in those countries as well. Now, I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying that even in those settings, they will draw back to, we're just drinking it for our meals, or with our meals. We're not going out and getting drunk, and that would be the argumentation they would put forth. But as Christians, we come back to, and Randy makes a very good point with this. He says, just because it is a cultural norm doesn't mean it is not a sin.
Very true.
Yeah. Shane makes the point from Isaiah 5:22, woe to those who are heroes at drinking wine and valiant men in mixing strong drink. Which a lot of people in our culture today would fit that mimicking of Israel there. Daniel says, I don't believe either of you two have done this. I just think it is worth saying. I believe especially on moral topics, every point is not a valid point. Our argument must be sound to what God's Word actually says. And that's right. In the end, it's not what we say. It's what the Bible says that establishes the right or wrong.
Well, Daniel, I'm going to tell you something. I wasn't always a Christian. In fact, I didn't become a Christian until between my freshman sophomore year in college. And as a high school student, I was guilty of trying alcohol, so I know what the effects of alcohol are. I know what the effects of alcohol are on my friends. And I've been drunk one time. That one time was enough to tell me that I didn't like the taste of beer and I didn't like the taste of strong alcoholic beverages, and I didn't have to worry about touching it after that. And that was before I became a Christian. After I became a Christian, I realized exactly why I didn't like the taste of them, and that's because of the fact that God never intended for me to like the taste of it.
That's a good point. The only time I've ever been drunk is I was drunk with love for my wife.
Oh, ho, 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 ho.
Wrong topic, though, but I thought I'd throw it out there just in case she's listening tonight. I'm not getting out of trouble.
Brownie points, huh?
Well, let's talk about drunkenness now. That's, we can definitely, people say, well, we definitely show from the Bible drunkenness is wrong. And they're right. I mean, in Galatians chapter 5, 19 through 21, let's consider what Paul writes to the churches throughout Galatia. He begins by saying, now the works of the flesh are evident, which are, he lists adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lewdness, idolatry, sorcery, hatred, contentions, jealousies, outbursts of wrath, selfish ambitions, dissensions, heresies, envy, murders, drunkenness, revelries, and the like, of which I tell you beforehand, just as I also told you in time past, that those who practice such things will not inherit the kingdom of God. And it is interesting that he puts drunkenness along with idolatry and sorcery and hatred and outbursts of wrath. That he lists drunkenness where you willingly continue to imbibe the alcoholic drink to the point where you become drunk. It's a work of the flesh.
Well,
and those who do things such will not inherit the kingdom of God.
And the point is, there's no little sins or big sins. A sin
That's
is
right.
sin, period.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let's look at Romans 13:13.
Let us walk properly as in the day, not in revelry and drunkenness, not in lewdness and lust, not in strife and envy.
Okay, that's the way that we used to walk before we became Christians. Let us not walk that way. In 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 3, bringing back a passage that we read earlier from the chat room there, Peter says, for we have spent enough of our past lifetime in doing the will of the Gentiles, when we walked in lewdness, when we walked in lust, drunkenness, revelries, drinking parties, and abominable idolatries. Drunkenness listed there with abominable idolatries. And then the last one, Dale, 1 Corinthians 5:11.
Paul said, but now I have written to you not to keep company with anyone named a brother who is sexually immoral, or covetous, or an idolater, or a reveler, or a drunkard, or an extortioner, not even to eat with such a person.
That's right. That's right.
And basically, I mean, you could add all those sins, is not to keep company with anyone who sins in any way.
And what we're talking about, a continuation in the sin, an unwillingness to turn away from that sin, is what Paul's talking about here.
You know, supposedly, and I've not been to the cemetery in New York, but supposedly there's a grave of a 12-year-old girl there with a tombstone on that grave, and the epitaph on that tombstone says, she made it easy for us to be good in her presence. And as Christians, we should make it easy for anyone who is with us to be good in our presence.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Along those lines, Alan made a very good point in the chat room. Does having one beer appear right? Does everyone know it is only one? No, they look at it as you're drinking, not that you're drinking one. So appearance, in that case, is not good. And we should live our lives in such a way that makes it easy on everybody else around us to be good. Like what you're talking about there, follow the right example. Now, I will say this much, and not to go against what Alan said. I think Alan makes a very good point. But if you were to walk at a baseball game and you were carrying a beer in your hand, unless someone there knew you, or you were walking past some highly religious people such as ourselves, okay, most people wouldn't look at that and go, oh, look at what he's doing, shame on him. You would kind of blend in, but that's the problem. You're blending in with the world. Oftentimes we talk about our influence. The thing is, when you're doing what the world does, the world isn't going to look at you and say, shame on you. But when you begin to try to teach the world and you profess a higher standard of morality than the world, then they will call you down on you having done the very same thing that they had done. And so he makes a good point there. No matter what the world may think about us, we must always make certain that our appearance is right. 1 Thessalonians makes a point that we're to abstain from all appearances of evil. Now, contextually, I believe what Paul is saying there is you avoid evil. You abstain from that form, from the appearance. You look out and you see it coming, you get away from it. But there is something to be said for making sure that we don't look like that we are blending in with the world. It's when I first started preaching, the first congregation we worked with full time was in Opp, Alabama, and the building was here, and then the house was over here. They had a little preacher's house and everything, and we put up a little badminton set. Ron and I did in front of our house there. And most people driving by would realize that's what it was. But a time or two I wonder if someone's going to think that this is the church's badminton set, And I doubt very seriously they did. So there are certain things that may not be wrong in and of itself, but if it puts forth a wrong perception, then we need to abstain from it. But if it looks like we're doing what the world is doing, and if we truly are, then we must not. Because it puts off the bad image there. Let's see, a couple more comments. The chat room's been really, really helpful to us tonight. Good thoughts. Guest 614, and I think this is our friend Angela from over in Ireland, where it's very, very early in the morning for them. She is on sick leave. She's been sick for a while and is now getting better, if this is who 614 is. Anyway, it goes on to say, and also interesting that it is the 14th down the list there. So much rottenness before, talking about drunkenness listed there within that text there. And then Shane Marshall Nash says, put on the Lord Jesus Christ, Romans 13:14, and do not give thought to the flesh to do its desires, or do not make opportunity to fulfill its lust there. And then continuing, Joe Glatz says, what is our duty and responsibility as a Christian? It is to point to Christ, not to blend in. And that's an excellent point.
Excellent point.
Yeah, excellent point. And 614 goes on to say the people around us need to know our moral character. So when they might espy us, see us coming out of a pub, yes, she's from Ireland, they will jump to the right conclusion there. In other words, I've heard people say, well, if your car is broken down, you can't go into a bar to use the payphone. I disagree with that. But if someone who knows you sees you coming out, your moral character should be as such that they know he's had to go in there for some reason, probably to use a phone. They should automatically assume the best of us if they know us. Couple more real quick, and then we'll get on back to the lesson here. Brian says Pam cooking spray has alcohol in it, as do many mouthwashes. Clearly, those are not sin. Clearly, too, social drinking is wrong for the sake of appearance. Where's the line between that and a glass of wine at home? And I think that is a good question, and I think that is a question that is going to be answered differently depending on the individual who's answering it. Some will say that social drinking is separate from one glass of wine at home because you're by yourself. You're not in a social function drinking party setting. Others will say socially you're at home, you're drinking one glass of wine, therefore it is no difference. And I think the best way is for a Christian to look at that. Now, my answer to it is you don't drink even a glass of wine at home.
Well, let's just suppose for a moment,
yeah,
because we can use that approach if we want to use that approach, that, well, when you're behind closed doors, that what you do in the privacy of your home is okay.
Yeah.
Let's suppose that you do that, and then for some reason you have a emergency situation. Child gets sick, spouse gets sick, or something. You got to run now and get in the car and take them to the emergency room.
Right.
Or your house gets on fire and you got to go outside now, and you've drunk a couple of glasses of wine or something. You're slightly inebriated.
Yeah.
Now it's no longer behind closed doors. So do you want to take that risk?
That's exactly right. There are certain medicines that are intended to help you sleep if you need it, okay? But that's for a specific purpose. You don't need the alcohol.
Right.
You don't need it. And listen, you should. There are a lot of things you can do behind doors that aren't wrong, that are supposed to stay behind doors. Husband-wife relationship. But if it's wrong, then it's wrong behind doors as it's wrong out in public. You know. And let's see. I'm going to jump down to one comment and we'll come back. Randy says, "Would you hide your mouthwash if the preacher knocked on your door?" That's a good point there. Yeah. Marshall reminds us, or Shane reminds us of James 4:4, that friendship with the world is enmity with God. And let's see. Oh, several more just coming in here. J.A. Gordon says, and also, where are you going to buy the wine? And what does that wine look like? I think that's a very good point. Rosalito's telling me that they weren't able to hear over there tonight. The point that J.A. Gordon makes is a very good point there, because you got to go in and buy it. I knew a sister in Christ one time said, "Well, I tell them it's for medicinal purposes." And I'm thinking, yeah, they really believe you. They don't know you from Adam, and you come in and buy whatever it is. You carry it. Their assumption is going to be quite simply, you're going to drink that.
Yeah, but we do need to recognize that we don't have to go into a bar or a liquor store to buy alcoholic beverages anymore. We can go into the grocery store. We can go into Walmart.
Yeah.
Poor old Sam Walton's probably turning over in
Yeah.
his grave because of what his kids are doing to Walmart. I can remember a time when it was never open on Sunday, and they never had any alcoholic beverages in there. But they had them. Here in the state of Oklahoma now is one of the big issues. Should they have stronger wine available in stores? Because there's one major retailer that's wanting to come into Oklahoma, but they will not come in unless they can sell wine, stronger wine, in that facility. This is the common practice that we have to deal with today, and so we just try to avoid all appearance of evil completely.
Yeah. Several good comments. We're going to have to continue with our lesson here, but one comment I wanted to bring out, Joe Glatt says, "I think that the line that needs to be drawn is consumption. You don't drink mouthwash. You don't drink a can of Pam. We are to be sober-minded. That indicates a consumption of alcohol, or not consumption of alcohol there." Yeah. And several other good points there. But I want to talk briefly about social drinking. And the reason why that we draw the conclusion from Bible study that social drinking is wrong is the fact that in 1 Peter 4:3-5, there is a distinction made between drunkenness and drinking parties. There's a distinction made between the two of them. Drinking parties would be a gathering where people are drinking. They may not necessarily become drunk, but they nevertheless are drinking. And oftentimes these drinking parties, they will engage in some other sinful activities as well because of the inebriation brought on by the alcohol. And Solomon made a good point in Proverbs chapter 6, verse 27. He said, "Can a man take fire to his bosom and his clothes not be burned?" Now, I'm going to tell you my personal reason for not drinking alcohol, in addition to what the Bible says. If we were to take all the Bible passages and set them aside for just a moment, to me the following reason would be a perfectly acceptable reason for refraining from alcohol. Okay? It's the idea. I realize the context of Solomon's question is dealing with sexual immorality. But the same question would apply to alcohol. Can you take fire to your bosom and your clothes not be burned? We talked about alcohol and the absorption of it into the body. You drink it, it gets into your stomach, it is absorbed through the stomach lining, it gets into the bloodstream, makes a beeline to your brain. Now, look at the effects of this poison, and it is considered a poisoning, hence the term alcohol poisoning. Think about its effect upon your mind. How many husbands have misbehaved themselves in public because they were drunk and had to pay for it later? How many individuals who drank one too many beers got pulled over and got their license taken away because of the drinking and driving? I saw on a show the other day, I was flipping channels, and the police officer had picked up some underage girl who was at some party and was giving her a lift home. While in the back seat of his car, she popped open a can of beer she had in her purse. Immediately arrested on the spot. Well, why is it? It's because they know the effects of alcohol on the body. In my family history, not immediate family history, but in my family history, I have those who have been alcoholics. I have a cousin who passed away due to liver failure because he drank and drank and drank every day. To me, the effects of it are so devastating, and the potential there for devastation is so real that common sense, especially in our culture, says there's no need for it.
Well, here's the simple test and everything you're saying is exactly right. And this may be a good way to kind of bring this almost to a close and everything is anything we do, is it acceptable for our children to do it as well? Is it acceptable for our children to drink alcohol, drink beer or wine at the table? If not, then why would it be acceptable for us? Is it acceptable for our children to smoke tobacco? No. Even any store you go into, they will require an ID, and you have to be 21 years of age to buy alcohol or cigarettes. Now, there may be some that will say, well, that's not altogether true, and that is true. In some states, the age of 18, you can buy 3.2 beer, but you can't buy anything stronger than that. Okay, but you still have to be at least 18 to even get that alcohol. Now, if it's okay, if it's good for you, then why can't you have that at the age of 3 or at the age of 6? And the answer is that these things are toxic, and children are not to consume these things. Therefore, they should be toxic to us as well, and we should not be consuming these things, because we are to be an example to our children. We are to be examples to those who are not Christians, those who are looking upon us and observing us, because oftentimes the only Bible they might read is our actions.
Well, let me build on that for just a moment. Let's say you take for the argument, let's take for example, you've got the Christian who believes that in the privacy of his home he can drink one glass of wine with his meal. All right, so he and his wife does that. They don't let their children drink. Now, what do their children grow up seeing?
They're growing up looking for that time that they're old enough to drink that glass of wine.
Exactly. I mean, their parents may try to say, now listen, kiddos, we only do this once a week as a special occasion. We don't do this very often. No, the kids see mom and dad drinking wine, and they can't do it right now, and one day they will do it. I mean, that's so many kids have grown up that way. It's the legal drinking age tends to be the greater point in their life than even getting married for some of them. You know, and it's like this is an attainable goal that we can't have right now, but one day we'll get it. We'll finally be able to drink and vomit. You know, this is what they're looking for. And so parents may think, I have the liberty to do one glass of wine. But what's the message you're teaching your children? Now, what are they going to walk away with? So many great comments have come up in the chat room. For those who are watching this video at a later time, that's why we try to bring the comments in, because we don't have the chat on record, of course. But so many good comments there. And there was one I wanted to try to bring out here for just a moment. Sarah made the point a little bit earlier. She says, many people can find loopholes for consuming alcohol. However, if our heart is in the right place, we realize that loopholes do not change what the Bible says. You know, it may be our justification, but in the end, the Bible says what it says. And then Sarah says, how many people have lost their lives because a person chose to take that first drink? Again, some will say worst case scenario. but it proves that it can happen. And if they had not been drinking, that would not have happened. Brian does he doesn't think you should drink a glass of wine, but he does say that we do have to acknowledge some ambiguity when alcohol exists in so many products we use every day. We do have to address this and kind of wonder about it and realize that not everybody's going to see it the same way that we do. But one step, and this is Angela from Ireland, one drink is the first step to addiction. I said that a while ago. It can be a very slow progress. Once the taste becomes familiar, the attitude becomes it's harmless or it's only one. Like you said already, don't take that first whiff or taste. And so many other good comments in here, but we have reached the end of our time. And wish I could bring them all in. Some of them I missed and tried to catch up. Alcohol is ethanol alcohol or ethyl alcohol. It is a volatile, flammable, psychoactive drug. That's what people drink. So I have a relative in my family history who was an alcoholic, and like you were talking about, the one who would drink aftershave lotion. The last drink this one relative took was of antifreeze, and that ended his life.
Probably.
It did. Yeah, it killed him. And so, what does the Bible say about Christian and alcohol? You look at our influence. You look at what it says about drunkenness and social drinking. You look at how we are to stay focused and sober-minded. The end conclusion for Christians should be to avoid it. To avoid anything that would alter their behavioral patterns and make it more challenging for them to serve God. And just something to think about. Now, we'd like to hear from you. If you have any questions or comments, or maybe you disagree with what we've taught in this study, feel free to let us know. You can send those questions and comments to questions@scripturalway.org. And we'll be more than happy to get back with you on it. We'll bring it into next week's study if we think it's something that would be relevant to that study, or maybe we need to talk about it further. But we would love to hear from you. Next week, we're going to touch on another touchy area, Dale, and we're going to try to cover it in a very wise fashion. We're going to look at what does the Bible have to say about a Christian's apparel. And so we'll try to cover that subject well. Are we done with the puns? Thank you so much for joining us. Dale, any final thoughts?
No, I really appreciate the comments from the chat room tonight. We had a
Absolutely.
lot of good comments, and it certainly added to the study. I appreciate that very much. And like John says, if you have any questions or comments that you want to make afterwards, we'll certainly look at them, and we'll try to respond to them on the next session.
That's right. That's right. If you live in the Oklahoma City area, Edmond area, come out and see us. The meeting place of the Seminole Pointe Church of Christ is located at 16300 North May Avenue, Edmond, Oklahoma. Visit our website at www.seminolepointe.org for more information. Thank you very much, and Lord willing, we will see you back here again next Tuesday night at 7:30 p.m. at scripturalway.org.